Hi everyone, my part about the case summary. About this acquisition, I will introduce some information to you. On April 30, 2014, the China Merchants Group and the Australian Hastings Fund Management Company, they paid $157 million totally to the New South Wales government to build a Newcastle port 98 years using time. What happened before the acquisition? There are several competitors in this acquisition. Hong Kong Tycoons, China Merchants Group, and the German Bank, they all want to win this acquisition. But finally, the China Merchants Group win. 10 years ago, the China Aluminium Company want to purchase one Australian aluminium company, but the Australian company failed it because they worry the motivation is not about the business. So, people want to get some experience from this successful case. They find 3 ways. The first thing is about the timing. The acquisition should to create a win-to-win situation. The local company of Australia, they want to private company invest in their infrastructure. So there is a reason like this acquisition successful. The second thing is about the motivation. For a lot of people, for normal people and the media, they worry about the foreign company acquisition motivation is not about the business. But the China Merchants Group, they have a lot of experience and skills in shaping and organize the port. So the local people and medical, they very agree it. The China merchants also introduce themselves. They spend a lot of money in social media and traditional media to let the normal guys know what they do. They will organize it better than the past and invest a lot of money. I think that there is a last reason to let this acquisition successful. Thank you.
Question 1. Who are the main stakeholders in China's Merchant Group's acquisition of the Newcastle port, and what are their key interests and concerns in the acquisition? The two stakeholders we have are China Merchant Group and the Infrastructure Fund, also known as the Hastings Funds Management. About the shareholders. China Merchant Group, it is a state-owned enterprise. It's the top public port service in China. Owns many of China's toll roads, shipping, logistics, marine repairing, and trading. The China Merchant Group also has a finance sector offering banking, securities, and insurance. And also, the China Merchant Group has a property sector that develops commercial and industrial property, community zones, elite real estate, and cruise ships. The Infrastructure Fund, like I said, is also known as Hastings Funds Management. This includes land, roads, railways, and other infrastructures in the wharf area of the Newcastle port. The key interest in the acquisitions that the stakeholders are involved in is the internalization of the port's business, opportunity for increased revenue. China Merchant Group also wants to internalize their infrastructure and join their business in China with the new port in Australia. China Merchant Group is concerned the constraints of the port's infrastructure limit international growth, and this is an opportunity for potential expansion by adding infrastructure in Newcastle. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening.
A challenge that SOEs face in efforts to acquire strategic assets in foreign countries is that their agenda comes off as being political, and implementation of government strategies are outside normal business factors. SOEs can collect grants from home countries, which conflicts with free market values, and the lack of transparent corporate governance of SOEs, sometimes accompanied by lack of operational effectiveness, can make their acquisition of local firms less desirable. What SOEs consider advantages, such as support from Chinese government and trappings, others deem destroys the value of shareholders and has a hubristic and managerial motive evidenced by empire building and agency problems. And so basically, SOEs are viewed as monopolistic, and they also have a reputation of not completing acquisitions. So less than 50% are completed after they are announced, which leads to uncertainty and negative reactions from foreign countries. They also lack the ability and experience in due diligence in financing in developed economies. So what SOEs can do to deal with those challenges is prove that the acquisition is not political and more commercial. They should make sure that the acquisition comes at a time that the government, local community, and foreign investors all reap benefits. For instance, they should consider issuing capital to fund important projects in local areas as a way of support. They should also consider allowing the acquired companies to retain autonomy, keeping the top management intact, and encouraging more interactions between the two sides. And last but not least, they should be sure that the acquisition is not only strategically fit, but also organizationally fit.
Question number 3. What are your recommendations for the China merchant groups in operating and managing the Newcastle port effectively after its acquisition? To answer this question, we used an article from 2017, so the answer seems a bit more relevant and up to date. In 2017, the China Merchants Group acquired a new port. This port was located in Sri Lanka, and it offered them access to an important shipping route. This shipping route connected Asia to Europe. This port cost them $1.12 billion, and their lease will last 99 years. This acquisition concerned many governments. These governments included the United States, Japan, and India. They became concerned that the port would be turned into a Chinese naval base. So this kind of brings us to our first recommendation. Our first recommendation is that the China Merchants Group acknowledges stakeholders. They did this appropriately in the case because the Australian public was concerned that the acquisition of the Newcastle port was more politically motivated than it was commercially motivated. So the group set out to satisfy these concerns and prove that they were commercially motivated. They did this by alerting the public of their many years of experiences in managing ports, which, by the way, they had 140 years worth of experience. They also owned many other ports and similar businesses, and that they were a Hong Kong-based business. This needs to also be done in Sri Lanka when its stakeholders, the government's concerns need to be calmed, as well as the other stakeholders. The other stakeholders include the employees of the Sri Lanka port. They are going to be concerned that they're going to lose their job, which brings us to another recommendation, that they should retain the employees. They should retain the key talents because it'll calm these concerns and it'll also help their reputation in that area. Another recommendation we had was that whenever the China Merchants Group buys another port or buys another business in another country, it needs to learn the culture and the law of these places, because these can become very big obstacles. When a place acquires another company in another country, there's going to be clashes of cultures. So the more that they can learn about it, the better that they can prepare and reduce the risk of these differences, like arguments. And by learning about the laws, they can prevent themselves from doing something that violates it, or also getting penalized. In the case, they had this advantage because they were already familiar with Australian law and culture because they had operated many other businesses there. However, in Sri Lanka case, that doesn't really seem to be the issue, and that they need to learn more about the Sri Lanka culture and law as they go further into this acquisition. Here's our reference page. Any questions?